welcome everyone to today Innovation Coffee Special Brew. And this is the third episode. We've actually done 3 episodes. It's amazing. We've done, it's really cool. Robert, cheers.
Cheers, my friend. Bink.
It's been amazing. I'm excited. This is day 3 of Arm Dev Summit. We've actually closed Arm Dev Summit. I mean, it's been an amazing experience. I'm actually really pleasantly surprised. I think, when we started this, I thought it was going to be a bit weird because we've always done conferences in person, right? This is the first online conference, but it's been amazing. I mean, I was actually really, really pleasantly surprised by all the people that joined from all over the world, right? I think it was a great opportunity for people to attend a session or sessions at Arm Dev Summit that maybe they wouldn't have attended if it was live in person, right? So I think it was really cool, and I'm really excited to do the breakdown of day number 3. And I think Robert, we have to share that we are under supervision today, right?
Under supervision, extreme supervision.
Why is that? Why is that? Tell me, why is that?
Today, we are going to have the amazing opportunity to speak with our supervisors at ARM, who have been leading a lot of the amazing things that we get to work on. So I think that it's a great opportunity for those of you who are watching today. If you've ever questioned why Alessandro and I do the things we do, it's because of the great leadership that we have for us. So we're going to get a chance to speak with our bosses, supervised.
Supervised. And, I mean, I'm just gonna kind of build on that. I think we've all the things that we've been able to do is because we've got amazing bosses, right? So today you'll get to meet them, and if anything goes wrong, it's their fault. No, I'm joking. But no, it's exciting. I think I'm really excited to talk about all the great things that happened today and in the last couple of days, right? So
before we dive in, though, oh, sorry.
Go. No, I was just going to tell you. You want to do the recap?
Yeah, absolutely. Quick recap. As you know, this is our 3rd day, as Alessandro mentioned, of the Innovation Coffee Special Brew. The first day, we met with Mark Abrams from Rancher Labs and Andre Workington from VMware. And then yesterday, which I'll talk a little bit more about, we met with Alex Glow and David, also known as Aiot JR. It was really cool because yesterday's episode was very much focused on the community. These 2 folks who joined us, they are both from the community and shared with us kind of their perspective on how they experienced the event. Not only that, and of course, please go watch that episode. I'm not going to go way deep dived into it, but not only that, we also got to meet Fenrir, which is a really cool companion robot. And for those of you who know Alex Glow, she's making really cool companion robots. This one is a fox-like creature that sits on her shoulder, and she told us all about all the technology that went into it, the work that she put into building it, and of course, the future iterations that she plans on building. So definitely go check that out. And Alessandro, you're going to share about the opportunity after the show?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that we want to share, right? The first one is you talked about Rancher Labs, actually, Mark being on the first show from Rancher Labs. And actually, our friends at Rancher Lab have given away or are giving away some really cool stuff. So go check out this link below. We'll put it in the description as well. So you've got an opportunity here to get some really interesting things. Do you want to share about the opportunity at the end, actually, Robert?
Yeah, if you stick around to the end of the show, we'll be joined by one of my colleagues, Kushal. He's going to share with us. Well, I don't think we need to keep it a surprise. For those of you who are interested in working on enterprise-grade hardware, we have an opportunity to gain access to one of the packet servers for up to 6 months. So applying through the Works on ARM program, you can get access to one of these. At the end of the show, Kushal will provide you with a special code that you can input into the request area, and one of the lucky submissions will be issued one of these amazing pieces of hardware. So make sure you stick around and get an opportunity to check out what the code is with Kushal at the end of the show.
Cool. And with that, I think it's time to dive into today's episode. So actually breaking down like what happened today at the Dev Summit with our bosses. So it's my turn first. So I'll bring in Eric. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, Alessandro. I'm really pleased to be here and to finally be able to keep an eye on you guys.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. Actually, it's the first time you joined the show, so I'm really excited, and I'm excited to ask you. I've got a bunch of questions ready for you, so I'm really looking forward to having the chance to ask them. Before we do that, though, do you want to just give a short introduction about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. No. My name's Eric. I've been with Arm for 8 years now, and my role now is my favorite of all the roles I've held at Arm for sure. I'm the director of our developer relations and ecosystem program within the A&I line of business. So that's automotive and IoT. That means that my developer team gets to look at robots and cars that drive themselves, and everything across the IoT. So it's just a fascinatingly diverse area. And I'm really very passionate about it. And my background before I came to this role was in engineering, software engineering. I was working on the IoT before we called it the IoT, that kind of thing. So it's been kind of a fantastic journey to get me to this point where I get to work with people like Alessandro, who are making this stuff happen, engaging with the people out there who are making it happen, and figuring out how we can empower developers, how we can let them get their hands on fantastic ARM hardware, on the right software tools and libraries and things that they need to innovate, to go faster, to make great things happen.
Cool.
Thank you for that.
Well said.
Well said.
And I think now it's my turn. Eric, thank you for the introduction, to bring on Kevin Ryan, who is my boss. So Kevin, welcome to Innovation Coffee Special Brew. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Awesome. So as we kind of did with Eric, I think it's your turn to give us a little bit of let us know about yourself, please.
Great. Yeah. So Kevin Ryan, been at ARM a little over 2 years now, responsible for the ecosystem work we do and the developer program within the infrastructure line of business. So that's the software ecosystem, the hardware ecosystem, and the developer program. And by infrastructure, what I mean is the cloud data center work we're doing, all the way down to the edge of the network, whether that be 5G or servers that may sit, basically anywhere where workloads live.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Perfect. So now that we've gotten to know both of our guests, I think it's time to dive into our first round of questions. What do you say, Alessandro?
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect.
You go first.
No, you're first.
Am I first? Oh,
yeah.
We got some notes there. I think there's a bit of tension, right? Because we are interviewing our bosses.
Don't be nervous.
No, but no, yeah. No, I actually have a question that's, I think, really interesting, because we've gone from, ARM has gone from a conference that we used to run every year called ARM TechCon. For the ones of you that have been there, it's always been kind of, it's been going on for a bunch of years. I actually don't remember how many years,
15.
But quite a long time. 15 years. There you go. And we've actually done I'd say a big switch actually from the conference last year to this year's conference, where you've probably seen that there is much more emphasis on developers, software, and because we've been doing software for a long time, right? Actually, yesterday there was an interesting something interesting that Mark Hambleton brought up, that we've gone from 1 to 4. So we used to have 1 software engineer to 4 hardware engineers, and Mark just shared that actually there is now 1 to 1, right? A 1-to-1 ratio. So it's like 1 software engineer to 1 hardware engineer in ARM, right? So it's interesting. I mean, there's been this shift in the last few years, and we're now reflecting that in the way we talk and engage with our ecosystem, right? So I think it's interesting to hear your thoughts on this evolution of our conference.
Is that for me?
It is for you, yes.
Okay. It has been fascinating. So I've had the pleasure as well of probably being at ARM, I think, the longest out of all of us here. So I do remember when it was called TechCon. Interestingly, if you go far enough back, prior to 2009, it used to be called Arm DevCon. So we've kind of come full circle a bit. But in in the last years that I've been involved in the event, certainly was a much greater emphasis on silicon design, but also there was quite a bit on embedded software, and the embedded software ecosystem was always present at TechCon in good numbers. But across a lot of our other areas, software wasn't as well represented or as well emphasized. So there's a bunch of things I think shaped our thinking and brought us to change. And one was just what's going on external to ARM across the industry. The software everywhere is kind of a driving force right now. You have ML emerging, as a major driving workload. You have everything that's happened in the data center in the last several years of cloud native and the huge amount of innovation on how software is developed, deployed, orchestrated, all these things. It's a huge change there. And as ARM technology has become more pervasive, as our compute platforms have moved from mobile and embedded to be deployed across data centers, to be front to center on what's happening with ML, we've by necessity had to go deeper on software. And even as our traditional mobile market has evolved as well, you can't rely on year-on-year performance gains coming from the silicon necessarily. That's a whole system picture. That's a big software piece. And so we've gone deeper on software in that area as well. And that is what kind of underlays Mark Hamilton's number. Half our engineers are now software engineers, right? And that's happened in these last few years because we have had to understand the software workloads to develop the hardware correctly, and also to contribute back to the software world contributions that will help them get the best out of our hardware. We contribute to literally hundreds of open source software projects. Mark's got the number somewhere, but it's hundreds, right, that we are contributing to. That's what all those engineers are doing. They're out there enabling the wider community to do great things. So that's kind of the wider background, right? Now, specifically on our event with TechCon, we were looking at how it had gone the last couple of years. We're thinking about what we weren't representing, how to draw in a wider audience, how to work with some of our partners more holistically. And in the meantime, there has been a developing developer relations function at ARM. So folks like Rob Wolf and Alessandro out there doing great things. And a couple of smaller scale events had occurred, one of which was last December. We ran an Aiot Dev Summit. And that was a really interesting data point, because the engagement we got at that event, the types of people who showed up, the types of companies that engaged with us, the quality of the content was all superb. And it showed an appetite for hearing more about software from ARM or from ARM's ecosystem. So that collided with an introspection. We looked at the TechCon agenda, and we decided on this major pivot. We're going to take most of that technical agenda, over 70% of it if we could, and make it focus on software. We were going to try and make it much more interactive, good technical information presented in a good way, but also more workshops, more ecosystem engagement. And we're really going to try and lean into this intersection of hardware and software, but also this intersection of data center, edge, endpoint, the people working in different areas, and bringing them all together. And we're really excited about that, and we thought it would be very special, big change, huge bit of work to change an event that had been going on for 15 years to be something else. But that's fine. We're going to tackle it. We're all super pumped up, and then COVID happened. So all of the above, and now it's going to be 100% digital. So that was our journey, and it's been quite a ride. But I'm incredibly proud of the team, including all the people on this call who helped make it happen. I think we did achieve something really special. There's been a lot of digital events this year, but if you go and look through the program that we pulled in, it's amazing. And I've been sat in some of the sessions watching the numbers of people engaging. It's just been really incredible this week.
It's going to be exciting actually to dive into some of these sessions and like what was discussed, right? Because there was some really interesting topics.
Oh yeah.
And it was, I think the other thing we mentioned yesterday on the live stream we did yesterday was, if anybody has feedback, share it with us, right? That's why we're here, right? So we're saying it's great, but if you don't think so, tell us why it's not, right? So we're also happy to get some feedback from you guys.
We got a lot of feedback in the community so far, comparing even this virtual event to other virtual events. Amazing feedback. I mean, of course, there is some constructive feedback, but overall, it's been very, very good feedback. And I think this is a good segue into kind of, building on Eric's point, the ecosystem and how it's changed a bit. Kevin, you released a blog at the beginning of this Dev Summit, and it's titled "The Arm Neoverse Software Momentum Continues to Grow for Edge to Cloud Infrastructure." So it's kind of hoping that you build on Eric's point as to how the ecosystem has changed, especially kind of for ARM with regards to our focus on software and how this is kind of evolving within the ecosystem and what you did with your blog.
Yeah, and to echo what Eric was saying, as we work on hyperscaler data centers and we work on edge compute, software is key in enabling that software ecosystem and that developer community that's developing apps for both the hyperscaler and the edge is key to us. So having those partners and those communities be a more integral and bigger part of Dev Summit, what was TechCon, was key for us, right? Because we can't do anything without the software and the developers that write the code on top of it. So I'm really thrilled with the way the content came together this year. Back to the blog. So the team, as we were getting ready for this event, we were talking about what we wanted to do, what we wanted to highlight, what partners we wanted to invite, and it kind of was a chance to reflect on what happened over the last year. And even though I was involved in, I think, all of it, forgot a bunch of the great things that happened over the year. So what we decided to do is write a blog that sort of summarized the big things that happened around the ecosystem over the last year. And they're kind of in 4 buckets, I would guess. One is around the ISVs. We did a lot of work the previous year with open source communities. This year, we've seen a ton of commercial offerings, either commercial based on open source or strictly pure ISVs announce support for Neoverse and for ARM. So that was one of the big trends we saw during the year. So we wanted to kind of, highlight and document that. The other thing we did is we've really put a lot of effort, and we'll talk about this a bit later, into the hardware ecosystem and sort of this marriage between hardware and software. How do you create a way for those hardware and software to work tightly together and make sure that it's frictionless to develop software on ARM hardware? So we wanted to make sure we highlighted that as well. And one of the other areas is one that Robert's led for us, which is, enabling the developer community. We really needed to figure out how to create a community and a place for people to come together to get the most current, best information about what's available and how to develop on ARM. It doesn't mean we host everything, and it definitely means we don't write all the content, but it's a central place to go where you can then find the best information about what you're looking for and also to engage with the community. So a lot of effort went into these things.
Yeah, it's awesome, actually. If you have a chance, we did post a link to the blog down below, Kevin's portrait there. Yeah. Go check it out. This blog branches you out to so much stuff that's happened. I think at the beginning of this conference, the team released all sorts of cool things for you to go check out. And it's all linked to in your blog, right?
We try to channel our inner GitLab. Those of you familiar with GitLab know they document everything, right? So it was kind of a guide to the year of what's happened with the ecosystem.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the ARM software ecosystem. Very cool. Yeah.
Awesome. I think it's time to actually dig into the event today, right? And if you want to talk about stuff that you've seen in the last couple of days, that's also fine. So a question for both of you. There was a lot of sessions. You guys probably remember the number. I don't remember. It's probably over 100, right? And there is a lot of stuff that I loved, but I wanted to hear from you guys. What were some of your favorite your favorite sessions? So Eric, do you want to go first with your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'll pick out a few that really stuck in my mind. I think the first one I'll mention is so Mark Hamilton in his keynote on day one was really passionate about developing for ARM on ARM. So being able to host your development environment on an ARM-based system, develop your code, compile it there. And I know he's been passionate about that for a long time. But what was really interesting about this one was that was not the only place I saw that. So across several sessions I dipped to in the event, questions along this line were coming from the audience. People were asking, "Can I get this on ARM?" One example is Docker Desktop. There are people asking there, unprovoked, when they could get Docker Desktop running on an ARM-based machine, be that a Windows and ARM machine or the other company that makes laptops, right? And when can they get that going? So it was, like I said, I've been with ARM for a while, so this has always been something we would love to see happen. And at this point, it feels like we're on the cusp. And to see that appetite reflected from the developers at the event was fantastic.
Yeah, there was actually a session on that. I don't know, Kevin, did you want to touch on that? So
yeah, I'll just jump in on that one too. That is one of the key things when my team looks at what we need to do to enable the community and the developers is we've really got to provide the right set of both hardware and software tools to enable people to frictionlessly develop on ARM. We want it to be as easy and thoughtless as it is on x86 kind of machines. So, Mark hit on it really well. And what I'd like to say, I think we're making a bunch of progress there. There's a great session that Jason Andrews did around using Docker to develop on Windows 10 ARM machines using WSL2. Just awesome. He goes through the whole development process of developing containers and either pushing them into the cloud or onto a device. There's been a couple other big announcements today too. We've been enabling CI as a service on Equinix Packet for a while now. AWS and Travis just announced they have a CI as a service. So if you want to do development in the cloud, now you've got CI as a service with Travis and AWS. And the third one, which is one of the ones that I'm really excited about, is the work we did with Solid Run and Honeycomb. Right? People have been asking us for a better desktop development board development system. And I think the Solid Run Honeycomb is a great, if you need physical hardware on your desk or under your desk, the Honeycomb's a great product. It just boots standard Linux operating systems. It's standard firmware. Just a great development platform. So as Mark alluded to, there's still a long ways to go, and we don't think we're done by any stretch, but I think we showed some really great progress this year and have introduced some great tools for people who want to develop on ARM, for ARM.
Yeah, touching on that, there's actually been two ecosystem talks around both of those subjects you just mentioned, Kevin. There was one by John Nettleton from Solid Run who talked all about the Honeycomb, did a nice breakdown. We talked to some people about that. And then I believe it was yesterday, there was one with Justin Cormack from Docker who also gave a nice demo. And those videos are available right away. So you can basically go check those out on YouTube or go access them through the platform itself. And when you go register, you'll see them there. They should be accessible within 24 hours afterwards. So yeah, good point, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm just it's a good point time to remind everyone that all the content's available there for the next several weeks on the platform, and it will migrate to our channels. So just because the event officially ended today doesn't mean you're out of luck. You can get yourself online and catch all this great stuff.
Yeah. Cool.
I
think you had more though.
Did you have anything else? Sorry?
More.
Give us more.
Of course, there's more. The next one I had is kind of a bit more relates to my personal history as a developer as well. So there's a company in Cambridge called RoboK. They did a really great technical presentation, and they took you through all the background and some really interesting trials and evaluations they did. And what they do is they do basically sensor fusion-based localization, right? So how do you figure out where something is? They're mostly looking at automotive, but also other forms of autonomy for robots or other things that need to figure out where they are in the world in order to do their job. My first job as a software engineer was basically doing this kind of thing, doing location-based systems. So we were trying to track vehicles or assets, get that location back to a central space so a dispatcher or someone could see what was going on in real time. But of course, this is happening on the machine itself, figuring out where it is so it can make decisions. And that was personally interesting to me because of where the technology's moved in 20 plus years. So, there's a few interesting aspects to that, both hardware and software. So on the hardware side, of course, GPS is the big thing for location for most cases, and 90% of the time that's probably good enough. But there are a whole bunch of edge cases you get into when you're in this space. If it's urban canyons, if it's underground in a car park, even if it's satellite visibility can vary depending on where you are in the world as well. So there's a lot of edge cases where you need something more, right? And what's happened in the last couple of decades is sensors have gotten better and they've gotten cheaper. So, whereas I was lucky to have some kind of accelerometer or something, you have an accelerometer, you have cameras, you have LiDAR. And with cameras, the software is so much better in terms of computer vision and being able to do different approaches to using camera input to figure out where you are. So dead wrecking isn't just one sensor anymore. It's an amalgamation of several sensors, and they had some really interesting trials they ran on combining that data in different ways, running through it different algorithms to get the best result once you lost your GPS signal. So I found that really interesting because of my background, but also because I think that's one of the areas in robotics and autonomy that's fundamental to how computers end up touching the real world is knowing where they are.
That's super interesting. I think what's interesting about the Dev Summit that just closed is the variety and like the diversity in this number of sessions and the type of sessions. We've had so much different stuff, right? Like all the way from little devices to huge data centers to anything in between, right? Robots, you name it. And that was I think it's exciting to be part of this and just see all these amazing things, all these amazing partners doing all these amazing things, right? And I think I'm excited to be a part of it. Kevin,
it's pretty bittersweet. Sorry, I was gonna say it's pretty bittersweet being at the end of it and saying, oh, all this hard work, it all went through, and now we're at the end. But a lot of stuff happened.
Hopefully next year we could see all these partners live in person. But yeah. Let's hope that we can get to that. Kevin, it's your turn now. You've got a couple of things on your list.
Yeah, quite a bit. And there's a bunch of content I still need to catch up on over the next week. There's some great sessions I hope to watch after the event. But one of the areas that I'm spending a lot of time on and I'm really excited about is this whole emergence of edge compute and the notion of all the great software and tooling that's been developed for the cloud around cloud native being pushed down to the edge and actually past the edge into the device in a lot of cases. So there was a couple really good sessions today and yesterday around this. One was by Rancher. Right. And for those that don't know Rancher, they basically have taken Kubernetes and shrunk it and made it fit in the edge. So it's basically Kubernetes for the edge. It's part of the CNCF, but it's a much smaller footprint and addresses some of the connectivity issues you have once you get out of the data center and some of the security issues you have when you get out of the data center. So Rancher did a great demo showing how you can push cloud native applications from the hyperscaler down to a small edge device. And they actually run it on a Raspberry Pi, right? And run workloads on a Raspberry Pi. So this whole move of cloud native software deep into the network and becoming the way people build, deploy, manage, and monitor applications in the future is an exciting area for me. There's been a couple sessions around that as well. Redis AI did a session that's on the same topic around how to deploy ML AI on the edge with some of their low footprint AI solutions for edge. So the whole theme around the edge software stack in Project Cassini is really exciting, the work that's going on there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think so. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to interview Eben Upton, the founder of Raspberry Pi, right? And it was really cool to hear from him. The fact that his vision 5 years, 10 years ago, I think he started about 5-6 years ago, has become, or maybe 8, something like that, has become a reality now, right? Yeah, it's like, now Raspberry Pis have become this like ubiquitous thing. Like they're everywhere, right? Like everybody has got Raspberry Pi. I think he was. I don't have. I forgot.
I got a stack of them right
exactly.
Here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's just a. I've got one too.
These are.
It's
the amount of our cloud native code and demos that run on Raspberry Pi is amazing.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely amazing.
And he was saying how like during the pandemic he saw an uplift of requests or people buying Raspberry Pis, right? And you're saying how actually like Raspberry Pis are really becoming the computer, and a lot of people are used it throughout the pandemic to connect, so to run things like Zoom or whatever else like they were running, or to like watch be on the internet in general, right? And it was quite interesting to just get that insight from him and realize how much has happened in the years, and how it's really become easy to just do stuff on a Raspberry Pi today, or a lot of other SBCs as well, right? Raspberry Pi is a prime example just because everybody has one, right? It's very. But yeah, Kevin, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, like I say, it is incredibly important for our developer community and the things we're doing, right? And it talked about another theme that's come out through some of the keynotes is from the tiniest devices to the largest hyperscalers is where ARM stretches. We're enabling software communities to go from small devices, Raspberry Pi, to the largest hyperscalers like AWS. So we've created this software development ecosystem that spans that whole way from a Raspberry Pi to the largest hyperscaler. And I think that's going to serve us well, because what it means is code that's developed will be able to run anywhere in the network. And I think that's going to be the requirement going forward.
I wanted to share this slide. I snapshotted it from Chris Berge's keynote, just to kind of give an idea of how this ecosystem, this software ecosystem that we're talking about. It's just huge. I don't know, Kevin, could you talk a little bit to this slide?
Yeah. So, a few years ago, one of the big complaints, there's a couple of big complaints about ARM in the infrastructure in the data center hyperscaler space. One is, I can't get access to hardware, and 2, I'm not sure the software works or the software doesn't work. And I think, over the last couple of years, we've, still work to do, don't get me wrong, but I think we've basically solved those 2 problems. You can get access to ARM hardware in the cloud now through AWS, through Equinix Packet, through multiple places. You can just, with a credit card, turn on and use ARM hardware. The other is, the most common OSs, runtimes, languages, container and virtualization technologies, all those now run on ARM. So what we're finding is applications mostly just kind of work. They may have to do some work. You may have to put an engineer on to make sure stuff recompiles and all that kind of stuff. But basically, all the building blocks are in place, and software just basically works. There was a great day one, I believe. There was we had SmugMug and Honeycomb IO in AWS talking with Chris Berge. And SmugMug and Honeycomb IO were talking about their experience of moving from x86 EC2 instances to ARM instances. And they said it basically just worked. It took them a couple days. They may had to relink some libraries or do a little bit of work, but it basically just worked. And for that little bit of work, they get 40% cost savings. So what we're finding is now that it's just a lot easier for people to just have their applications get up and running on ARM. Don't misunderstand. We've still got a lot of work to do, and we're going to be aggressively working with the software ecosystem. But But people are able to move their apps now and run seamlessly on ARM infrastructure. It's pretty exciting.
I like these new layouts that you're trying, Alessandro. It's it's
good, eh?
cool. No, that's I mean, it's awesome. I've been watching these keynotes. For me, I don't know, the sessions, proctoring sessions throughout the day, I've been kind of limited to what I can see. So I really look forward to everything going, on demand, so I can go back and catch up on all these things. But I have been able to see all the keynotes, and it's just amazing. Every single morning, I'm getting to see all the cool things that are being announced. And that kind of leads into this next segue here. I have a question for you, Kevin, on all of these announcements, and I'm going to just rattle a bunch of them off, if that's okay.
Yes.
So we had VMware, ESXi, ARM Fling, Azure Pipelines, AWS Code Build, GitHub Actions, Circle CI, all on native ARM, System Ready, building a strong hardware ecosystem, a growing ISV ecosystem, which, in case someone doesn't know what that means, it's the independent software vendor ecosystem. And there's just so much more, right? So, I mean, we could just continue to go down this list. But my question for you is, what does this mean to the ARM ecosystem right now, the ARM software ecosystem? And could you touch on kind of like the direction we're headed with all of these announcements that I just talked about? Like how are these contributing to the better developer experience?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the VMware one was significant. There's actually been two announcements. There was an announcement made at VMworld a week or so ago where they announced support for ARM-based SmartNICs, their Project Monterey. So the huge step forward, right? That ESXi will now be running on ARM SmartNICs. It's a real big opportunity for them. And for us. And then at the show today, VMware announced what they call the ESXi Fling. And what that basically is they're making ESXi on ARM available to customers and to community. And the reason they're doing it is they want to understand what the use cases are and what the feedback is and what people want to do with ESXi on ARM. So it's very much a community-driven effort to gather feedback on what people want to do. So what we've done is now people can just go download ESXi on ARM. We have platforms to support it. Raspberry Pi, you can download ESXi on Raspberry Pi. A matter of fact, most of the demos for the show were done on Raspberry Pi. You can run it on bigger systems like the 16-core Honeycomb if you want a beefier system. You can run it on full-blown servers like Ampere eMag systems. So basically what we're doing is opening up VMware to the ARM ecosystem. And to the VMware ecosystem. And we're just excited to see how that evolves and what use cases evolve out of that. So that'll be a big one to monitor over time. The other big one is the System Ready. And that's part of what we're doing with Project Cassini, which is all around enabling hardware at the edge. So we've got server ready, and we know that's all spec'd out, and server parts define their chips to the specs, so the OS is just run. That's all good. As we get down into the edge, really need to define those standard interfaces and make it so that the software ecosystem just runs on the edge hardware as well. That'll come in various shapes and sizes and form factors. So what's been exciting about System Ready is it's been universally cheered and endorsed from the ecosystem, from our silicon partners to the ODMs who build platforms based on ARM, to the operating system vendors where sort of hardware meets software at the OS level, to the ISVs. So now, I think the slide we showed today had 40 or 50 different companies endorsing what we're doing around bringing standards to the edge. So now we're just in execution mode of making sure we get those platforms and that software enabled so you can run your code anywhere you want from edge to core. So to me, those are two of the biggest ones. Now, CI/CD is near and dear to my heart. When we started a year and a half or so ago, it's hard to develop cloud native code if you don't have CI/CD infrastructure to run your code on, to test and release your code on. we can say now with the announcement of Circle CI today, announcing support for ARM, we pretty much have all the major CI platforms now work. So if you're a project and one of the things you were worried about is, hey, I don't have a CI tools in place to support multi-architecture, to support ARM, I don't think that's the case anymore. Pretty much whatever tools you're using, we have support for. So pretty exciting announcements.
Yeah, and on the VMware announcement, looking back at day one of these, the series we've been doing, you can actually also hear Andre talk a little bit about this, and he refers to, the ESXi ARM fling it's not a beta, it's a fling, right? And so he dives a little deeper into this as well. So I definitely suggest anyone who's watching to go back and check that out too.
There's a great session that he and Daniel Beveridge did today, I believe, that goes through the fling in detail. Awesome. So if you look up Andre or Daniel and VMware, you'll find it.
Yeah, we'll try to. Alessandro and I always try to do that. Like when resources are mentioned during the call, we try to include them in the description below. So make sure to check that out.
And I wanted to jump in quickly here to say one thing. So I'm not an expert when it comes to cloud and servers. I usually tend to use really small devices, but I usually lean on Robert when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I wanted to say something I did that I actually enjoyed from I think it was yesterday. Yeah, the panel that Chris Berge was running with a bunch of folks that were actually running on AWS Graviton, right, servers. And actually, I've got a tweet here that I wanted to share with you guys. That maybe Kevin, maybe you could mention, I don't know, like I don't know
if you
remember anything. Yeah, Liz from Honeycomb, right? It was here is saying there's a reason I encourage people onto ARM at Arm Dev Summit today, right? And it's interesting. She's saying cutting your company's data center carbon footprint by 40% is no joke, right? And this is just one of the things that they brought up. There was numbers around cost and around power consumption, but it was quite interesting to see how the adoption, the real adoption, right, from companies that are using data centers today, and their numbers. Usually you tend to see companies kind of marketing what they're doing, right? Where this was a really interesting panel I found because it was people using our stuff and telling us, and you see, and what actually is even more interesting is that then you see Liz tweeting about it. So you actually think, I'm kind of outside of, I wasn't involved in that session. So you see the tweet and you're like, oh, it was real then. Like, it's not just, it's not just marketing. Like, this is, if she's tweeting about it, it must be real, right? So yeah, I don't know if you wanted to share something about that session or in general, like the numbers that were raised there, if you got any ideas.
Yeah, no, it was, it's funny with the, the power savings. We at ARM tend to take that for granted that we're power efficient, right? And we're now at a point where performance is better than a lot of the competitive silicon out there, and you saw that through some of the presentations, like on Nginx, we're 40-50% faster than comparative other EC2 instances. But yeah, the carbon footprint's a big deal too. And, less power is really important to one, data center operators, but two, a lot of companies now that are very trying to be carbon neutral and trying to be environmentally conscious, knowing that they're using infrastructure that lets them reduce the carbon footprint without giving up any performance or capability. It's kind of a no-brainer to do it.
Chris Berge put out a really good slide this morning, actually a few slides during his keynote, where you can kind of see over the last decade, I think, or 15 years, where compute need, internet usage, basically everything that happens on the internet has doubled, right, over time. And then he projected what's going to happen from 2020 to 2030. Well, projections are that it's going to double again, right? And I'm not going to get these numbers exactly accurate, but in the past, the cost has roughly remained the same. Now, over time, what's going to happen, this cost and power usage could go up. And if we don't do the right thing, then it could go up. And this is where the whole Neoverse comes into play, right? And so I can't talk about it right now, but it's a great keynote to watch, and you can kind of get a deep dive into that if you go watch it. It's good.
Yeah, I think people have gotten what they can get out of virtualizing, right? I mean, that was one of the ways you kept power and cost down, is better utilization of of CPU and servers. And now it's ARM is going to help in that next leg of keeping cost and power down.
Yep.
Exciting stuff.
It
Exciting
is.
stuff.
It is.
Super exciting.
Right. I wanted to move on to a slightly different topic. So, I'm quite passionate about machine learning, and what's interesting is that there were a lot of sessions on machine learning. I mean, there was a whole track, but there were some sessions that were kind of talking about the intersection between machine learning and IoT, and I think that's a super interesting topic in general, because the ability to make sense of the data that is captured is huge, right? Like, we used to be shipping all the data that an IoT device was capturing to the cloud and then doing something on the cloud, where I think, we're moving to a world where there's a lot of things that could happen on the device itself. Obviously, there is, reasons and situations in which you're going to do some processing on the cloud as well. But it makes sense to do more processing on the edge when in certain cases, right? So there was a lot of sessions around that. And Eric, I wanted to ask you, what were your favorites out of those? If you've captured any, if you've managed to watch any of those.
I've caught some of them. I've seen some of them are on my to be watch list as well. I've got a long list as well, Kevin, just like you do. I think some highlights for me were a couple of the workshops that we were lucky enough to host this year. There's one from Pete Warden and the TinyML gang, and another one today from OpenMV. Interestingly, both of these are on Vision, right? And Arduino actually this week, in time with our event, announced their Portenta Vision Shield. So this is a vision shield for their Arduino or Portenta platform. And that's, this is an MCU platform. This is a microcontroller, right? When I started using microcontrollers, the idea of doing any kind of computer vision on them, you've been laughed out of the room, right? But what you can do on it today, like it's incredible. They're doing feature recognition running on a Cortex M7, and it's amazing. So what you can do has advanced so much. And then, one of Kevin's earlier points on this chat is we built this ecosystem that goes from the cloud data center right down to these tiniest endpoints, right? And so figuring out how to make it frictionless to deploy those ML models so that they optimize and scale correctly depending on where you're putting them. If it's a big rack in a data center, if it's a standalone gateway in the edge infrastructure somewhere, or if it's a tiny thing, running on a battery in a room somewhere, we're enabling that. And that's kind of one of the most exciting things that happened this week. Is if you watch Dipti Vahani's keynote, she announced a partnership where we've started with Microsoft. So we've worked with Microsoft on a lot of things, but in this case, we are working with their Azure Edge Devices group. And this is all about machine learning. This is about engaging with their machine learning developers and the tools that they have in the cloud, and combining that with our tooling and our device footprint, and figuring out how to make it effective, frictionless for Azure ML developers to get their models optimized for ARM and deployed to ARM. That's a really exciting collaboration. I think the fruit that bears in the coming months is going to be incredible. So I'm really excited to watch that one. I'm lucky enough to be relatively close to it that I'll get to see what comes of it pretty quick. So that's been a really, really exciting moment for me. And
on that note, I wanted to say that we just shared. So over there,
yeah,
the link to the blog that Dipti has wrote on the topic of Microsoft and a bunch of other things.
Yeah,
really interesting blog. And another thing, me and Robert will actually host the team from the Microsoft Azure team on our Innovation Coffee next week.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in machine learning and endpoint devices, then you should definitely come and watch it. Come and watch the show next week. So
it's on the blog.
Yeah,
scroll to the bottom.
It
is. It is.
And you make sure you Motanabian, the head of the Edge Devices group, did a really good kind of deeper dive blog as well. I think that's linked off of there, so check that out. And the Microsoft team is fantastic. They have a real fantastic kind of developer first attitude. They did a session on Azure RTOS as well. So check out Rob and Alessandro's session with them next week.
Cool. Yeah, that was a really interesting topic. And you mentioned before OpenMV. So I actually attended the workshop today, and it was actually shocking in a good way to see the amazement in people's. I can't say people's eyes because obviously they were kind of on camera and their cameras were off. But it was really interesting to see the reactions of people. They've managed in an hour and a half to run a computer vision model, actually to build a model and deploy it on the OpenMV camera using a bunch of really interesting tools from partners. One is OpenMV's tool plus Edge Impulse to actually build a model and do transfer learning on it. And it was interesting to see how, in an hour and a half, everybody, so it was 50 people, right? Everybody really got the board working and recognizing different objects that they trained the model for. And again, it's an MCU, right? And what was really interesting is seeing the reaction of people that actually I think came in not really believing that it was possible, and then seeing it, happening on their device was actually shocking. Also because it was actually quite interesting that Kwabena, the founder of OpenMV, actually said at the beginning, you don't have to train the stuff on the model on the same devices, the same things that I'm using to train it for, So he used different boards. He used a screwdriver, some random stuff. But he said you can use whatever you want, right? Because it's going to be transfer learning, and therefore you can use whatever pictures you want. And people just used different things, and it all worked. I mean, it was really, really amazing to see. So yeah, that was exciting. So if you have a chance, go watch that workshop. You can catch it later because it was really good, and there's a lot of good content there. Oh, we lost Robert. Something must have happened with his internet. But right, so that was interesting. I think. Is there anything else, Eric, that you want to bring up on machine learning and IoT that you've seen, or Kevin, if you've kind of come across any machine learning sessions that you found interesting?
Yeah, and I'll just reemphasize there's a really good one from Redis and Redis Labs that I think is worth taking a look at as to what they're doing around ML AI at the edge. We've been working quite extensively with them around Cassini and Project Cassini. I think people will find that one pretty interesting.
Awesome. You see why you need two hosts, because one of them could just die.
Redundancy. That's right. But there was a panel this morning, Alessandro, I wanted to mention that had Mark Hamilton again, but also Richard Grissenswith and Jem Davies. These are three of the brightest guys at ARM that I've known in my time here. And there's some interesting, and they talk about a lot of stuff, but there's some interesting things in there about AI workloads and, hardware, software, and what the best type of compute for a given workload might be. So that's a good one to watch. And these guys as well, they don't always agree. So that's always interesting to see too. So.
Yeah, that was, I actually tweeted about it, and I said on the tweet, I'm saying I like this session, but it's not because I work for ARM, right? It was really interesting because, you get to hear from these amazing people that, unfortunately I don't get to speak to every day because I don't work with them directly, but it's really cool to hear, all the work that we're doing around changing the architecture to kind of reflect real world problems that software developers are having, right? So it's like, how can we make a better architecture to actually address some of the problems that the software developers are having, and vice versa? How can we make better software so that our hardware can be utilized effectively? So that was I found that really interesting.
It's fascinating. It was a fascinating conversation. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, so, that was really good.
So I dropped. Obviously, did we already touch on the last topic, which was the server ready stuff, or sorry, system ready stuff?
I was waiting for you, Robert.
You waited for me. Excellent. All right, so we do only have about 6 minutes left. We don't like to keep the viewers past the hour if possible. So maybe we could just kind of give each of you a moment before we bring Kushal in to just share what you feel about the importance of this system ready announcement. So maybe starting with you, Kevin, and then moving on to Eric.
So if there's one thing I would encourage, developers or our partners to take a look at based on this week, it's the work around Project Cassini, right? It's really a big push for us as we move compute down to the edge. There's some great sessions. There's one with Rob Diamond and Nebu Phillips that talks about it. There's a bunch of different pieces of content. System ready is a big piece of it, making sure that the hardware is standard, so the OSs and software just runs, and we take that complexity out of the interaction between software and hardware as we drive deeper into the network and as workloads push towards the edge. So if there's one thing I would encourage developers or our partners to look at is Project Cassini and the work we're doing around cloud native security and standardizing the hardware infrastructure around that. Would love for all of you to join in, be part of it. Ask us if you're not quite sure what it is or how you fit in. But I think our broader ecosystem, almost everybody I know applies and should find a fit in what we're doing with Project Cassini.
Yeah, on that note, Alessandro, I think we should, dedicate an entire hour at some point for Project Cassini and the system ready. Yeah.
We should definitely. Yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about, and I just brought this up. I think there is some really good content on this page. So if you have time, take a look at this, because there's a lot of content, as well as all the sessions that have happened during the last 3 days. But yeah, we're gonna share this with you guys afterwards, so you're gonna have a chance
check
to
the description.
Yes.
And so you're up, Eric. Was there anything you wanted to add to Kevin's?
Well, I agree with Kevin completely. I mean, Cassini is huge. The impact this will have on the edge is going to be amazing, and it's just it's a foundational step to all kinds of awesome stuff happening, right? So. He mentioned system ready. That's a huge part. Just being able to, have your basic Linux or virtualization framework run on a greater range of hardware is such a huge thing. And once you have that, that's when you can tap into that massive cloud native ecosystem that Kevin and Rob have been building for the last years, right? So this is cloud native meets embedded for me, right? This is really fascinating moment in our space, right? Because taking CI/CD, taking orchestration, taking all these fantastic paradigms and technologies have come out of the data center and applying that to the diversity of the edge, getting that compute closer to people, but making it manageable in the way that data center compute is manageable. The potential there is huge. There's still a lot of work to do, and that's what's going to be really interesting. So, a big thing for my part of the business is autonomy and autonomous systems. And so how do you take something like orchestration and make it work with a safety critical or a hard real-time system, right? That's a problem we're working on. That's something we're figuring out how we solve that, and then how we enable developers out there to build on that, right? So there's a lot of really fascinating stuff. There's a white paper and a session on that one I just mentioned, by the way. So you can find that on the Cassini page. That area is really exciting, and just thinking about how this is going to change gateways, thinking about how this is going to change industrial, thinking about how this is going to enable these future autonomous systems is a really exciting moment. So I think you could dedicate more than 1 hour to this, guys. You can have your work cut out for you.
We'll do a series.
Yes.
Project
I heard that, Kevin. Did you hear that?
I hear.
I mean, there is. I don't know if you guys. We haven't told you guys, even though this is something that came up on one of our old sessions. But there's been talk for a while now about a 24-hour marathon of Innovation Coffee 24-hour. So we've got David here that at the beginning said good practice, because we did 3 sessions in a row, right? So good practice for a 24-hour marathon. And then there's David Dishner that actually brings it up again. Where is it?
Innovation Coffee Boost.
So I think maybe that's what we should do with Project Cassini, a 24-hour marathon.
Yeah.
But no, honestly, there's a lot to talk about, and it's one of the biggest gripes that people are having, right? Like the fact that there's so many different hardware, right? Like the hardware is so diverse, and I think this is an effort to like make it simpler for a developer to actually write code for all this different hardware, right? And I'm really excited about that. Cool.
That diversity is a huge strength of our ecosystem, but being able to easily leverage it, frictionlessly leverage it as a software engineer, it's always been the balance, right? So that's why this work is so important, is because we're going to make that so much easier for developers across that entire data center endpoint spectrum. Yeah.
And with that, I think it's time to bring in the massive opportunity that all the viewers that are still watching can have. Should we bring in Kushal?
We'll bring in Kushal real quick.
Yeah.
Bring in Kushal, allow him to share this real quick. And then after that, Kevin and Eric will give you just an opportunity to say goodbye here. So Kushal, welcome to Innovation Coffee. Real quick, if you want to just kind of tell us who you are, what you do with ARM, and then share this opportunity with our guests.
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So my name is Kushal Kulwal, and I'm part of the infrastructure ecosystem team here at ARM. So same team in Kevin's team. I manage our CI/CD ecosystem partner, and I also manage a program called Works on ARM with Packet. And today we want to give away something special to our viewers. Before I do that, I want to share a little bit of background on what the program is to set some context. So Works on ARM is a partnership between Packet, which is an Equinix company now, our silicon server vendors such as Ampere, Marvell, and some of the other ones, and ARM itself to provide ARM64 servers to software developers and broader community who want to build, test, and optimize software for ARM architecture. So one of the things Kevin mentioned was we want to make software developers' life frictionless, right? So we don't want infrastructure to be a barrier for any software developer, and we want them to enable with a world-class ARM hardware so that they can do their amazing work, right? So just to give you some context today, we support about 70 different projects on Works on ARM, and that spans from databases, languages, cloud-native project, machine learning project, some of the HPCs project, and even the CI as a service, which again, Kevin touched base upon, like Travis and Drone. They all run on Packet servers also, including the AWS Graviton 2, right? So we have some very cool projects that are happening on Works on ARM. So now, having said that, what we would like to do is give our viewers a one ARM64 server, which is a 32-core machine with 0.5 terabyte SSD, 128 gigs of RAM, for 6 months to the best idea submitted for the ARM architecture. So you have watched Dev Summit, Cassini, Systems Ready, maybe a great idea that might pop in your brain, right? Hey, would be cool. I want to do this for ARM, knowing what I've learned, right? Feel free to submit your idea, and we will select the best idea out of however many are submitted and grant you an access to the server for 6 months, which is almost valued about more than like $4,000 if you go to Packet, right? So Robert, is there a way to share the link? Or
the link is actually right below you,
and
then underneath that link is a little kind of thing that's scrolling across. That's the code.
Yes.
So you want to tell them how to do it?
Yes. So if you go to that link, all you do is create a new issue, and either you can put Arm Dev Summit in the title of your issue, or even you can label the project. There are plenty of labels, but you should see that label as number 2 on your list. So you can label that when you submit your request. And so let's say by next Friday, please submit your ideas by October 16th. And then within 2 weeks, let's say October 30th, we will let you know if your idea was selected or not, or it could be even shorter. So that's all I had to say. So
there is Kushal. There is you're happy. You're gonna be happy to know that David Tischler is already furiously brainstorming. So I think there's gonna be some great ideas. Actually, we've got a couple of our community members online that I think are gonna. I'm expecting some good ideas coming, so I'm excited.
Right. Yeah, everyone should go to the website and submit that code, submit your ideas.
Yes. And if you have any issues, you can just post it on that GitHub page itself, and I'll get a notification too, so I can help out.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes.
So if you'll stick around just for a minute while we say goodbye to Kevin and Eric here, let's go with you first, Eric, alphabetical. Sure. Is there any last words you want to say before we close this out?
I think it's been a fantastic week. I think a theme that kept on coming up for me are some of the really interesting intersections we're seeing right now, right? So ML developers working with IoT developers, me having to get to know you two guys better because cloud native is coming to the edge and to embedded. We're going to be working a lot together. But these intersections and then the entire intersection of software with hardware and how one is informing the other and feeding back. I think this is one of the best things about working for a company like Arm. And it's really exciting to be able to bring these communities together and to help figure out what the best way to, do ML for tiny devices is, et cetera. Do I have to cover for Kevin now? Is he?
I don't know. Did he drop off?
I don't see his picture.
Still here audio wise.
Oh, there you go. Okay, he's
okay.
still here,
Okay.
right?
Perfect.
That's one that kept on coming up for me, right? Is just looking across this event at the way that different communities of developers and at people from either side of the of the ISA, the hardware and software side, were coming together to discuss these topics, to present on their worldview, and to figure out what comes next.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric, so much. And Kevin, for you, any last thoughts?
Yeah, two things. One, as you scroll through the content, you'll see most of it is from our ecosystem, whether it be ISVs, communities, ARM innovators. So thank you to all of our partners who took the time and participated in the event. I thought the content was amazing. I'm more excited about the ecosystem now than I was beginning of the week, just watching all the stuff you guys showed. The second is, we had, I don't know if I'm allowed to say numbers, but we had a lot of people participate in Dev Summit this year, more than I think we anticipated. For those developers that participated, thank you. I hope it was a good use of your time. What I'd appreciate is feedback. Robert can provide some different emails and things. What can we do better? How can we support you better? Are we on point with the things we're providing to make it easy and productive for you to develop on ARM? Those are just the two things I'd like to close with. That, and I'm finally glad to know what Robert does every day. That's the third thing.
Every Thursday. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Thank you so much to both of you for taking the time and going through all of this stuff with the Dev Summit with us. And as usual, I think Alessandro, both of us take a second to say thank you to the viewers as well. So thank you to the viewers. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Kevin, for your time. Over to you, Alessandro.
Yeah, no, just reiterating that, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you guys for Kevin and Eric for being part of this. It's good to have a chance to close with you this 3-day, some sort of marathon. I mean, it's not really a marathon because it's, but it's, I don't know what you would call it, a 3-day event. And it's really a pleasure. There's a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot actually, and I'm going to learn more because I'm going to watch the sessions I haven't watched so far. So thank you again, everyone. And I think we're good to go. And next week, same time as before. So Robert, what's the time?
5 p.m. UTC, unchanging, always 5 p.m. UTC. So thank you. We'll see you all next week.